Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo night stream. I am your host, the Harry Channel, and with me tonight are minions DrFunctional.
Woo!
That's right, still with that new minion smell. Sora Luna.
Hello.
You're bringing a little dignity to things after what I just said. That's good. And
Penis.
Skep Tock. Penis. And Skep Tock.
Hi, everybody.
Skep, your volume is a little low.
My volume is a little low.
That is
There
much
you go.
better.
All right.
I feel like you and your microphone just got cozier. Okay.
What happened?
Now you're coming in really strong. So, it's been quite a rush today for me, just doing lots and lots and lots of things, and then rushing to get home and set all this up. So I haven't really spoken with anybody today. Is everybody doing okay? Anybody need to unburden themselves before we start?
It's hot and swampy, but otherwise fantastic.
Are you
We're
still in
starting.
lockdown?
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
We'll cover if anybody watches BP's show on Wednesday. We'll be covering a lot of that. What's going on with the stages?
The stages, meaning the. I mean, are
We
you
got
acquainted
stages
with?
too.
Okay, are either of you? I know Skep knows this. Are you either of you acquainted with something called Zeno's paradox?
No.
So
No.
this was one of these things that caused the Greeks all sorts of trouble because they didn't understand limits. And essentially, the idea is, over some, you're heading towards something like an arrow is coming at somebody's head, right?
You shoot an arrow at a target.
And as it doesn't matter. The formulation of it isn't the thing. The point is that you can say over some given interval, it gets halfway closer, and then another interval of time, it gets half again,
Right.
half again. Does it ever actually reach the target? You know, if you can basically break the time down so it's half and again. That's what is going to happen with COVID and the lockdown. You're never going to actually get back to where you were. They're just going to give you back half of what's missing each time.
Each time,
And then just hang on to that last little nugget. So June 16th is the California, we're going to open up for business woohoo day. But Gavin Newsom made sure to retain his emergency declaration powers. So we're going to undo all this
boy.
stuff, but it's still a state of emergency, so I can still just wank with people if I feel like it.
Well,
yeah.
Isn't that going to result in Gavin Newsom actually changing the fundamental nature of Zeno's paradox? Because with Newsom, the arrow will never reach the target. And in his world, you cannot sum infinite series of numbers, series of infinite number of numbers into finite sums.
Mhm.
Because you can continue to exploit the problem and use it as a lever to control people, he's not really motivated to ever open up.
Oh no. No. There's extra money left over from the government after the printing press has cooled off. And
Golden
currently
Narhales.
his plan is to just give it to people who might vote for him. I mean, people who are disadvantaged. You know, he could deal with the ongoing water problems in California. He could deal with just any number of big issues, or he could just use it to pay off some of the debt. But it's much better for him when he's facing a recall to just start printing checks and sending them to people. Because unlike former Vice President Joe Biden, he actually can't just print money. He can borrow huge amounts of money, but
I was just going to say
money.
he can borrow it by the bushel basket. The other thing is that with is California losing its middle class and upper middle class? I think those people are starting to leave California. You're going to be left with a very large underclass and the uber rich who don't really think of money the same way we do.
Well, you know, we should bring this up on a future stream.
I
can tell you
don't
the
want
answer,
to digress. Yeah.
The answer is yes. Income inequality in California is, I believe, the worst of any state in the U.S. If you view income inequality as being a identifier of things being
Yes.
bad. In reality, there's more than one California, and
Right.
it kind of distorts it massively distorts the numbers. There are huge parts of California that are very poor and very agricultural. And then there's parts of California that are very rich and very agricultural. And then there's parts of California that are extremely high tech, where the people who work for the big tech companies make a pretty good amount of money. Not in California terms, but I mean, it would sound like a lot if you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Making $175,000 in California is not a big deal.
It really isn't. That will support you rather handsomely in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, so what you're going to see, well, what you're already seeing is a lot of people who have modest means, sort of upper middle class people just going, hell yes, I'll sell my house for $2 million.
Yeah.
And then I'll move to Fort Worth and spend $450,000 on a house 3 times as large and 5 times as nice.
Yep.
And
On 5 times the acreage.
oh God, probably more like 10 to 20 times the acreage. But yeah, acreage here is a problem. But yeah, we'll come back to California occasionally. Not that just because I'm from California, I talk about California a lot. I know people from Canada talk about Canada a lot. We all talk about, our pain points.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of pain
we
points,
have firsthand experience living under that in those areas. So it's good to share because, I can read all I want about, say, California on the news or whatever, but to hear it from you or other people I know who live there, it's a whole lot more real, substantial.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not only that, I'm actually pretty clued into California politics, much more so than most people you would talk to.
Yeah.
Because I come from a family that was involved in it for a long time. So I know where a lot of the skeletons are. I know where a lot of the bodies are buried. But the main thing about
very
California,
admitting to being a Rockefeller.
Yeah, the main thing about California is just water is the number one thing. Water and immigration are the 2 things that I feel like I'm bringing the Spanish Inquisition. The third thing is...
Who was the big tycoon family in California?
Which one?
I don't know.
We've had a few.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, Sora, do you have anything you need to say? You've been very, very quiet. Complain about British Columbia?
Oh, yeah, that's unending. But on a positive note, we started cleaning out our shed that hasn't been touched in very many years, beyond just opening the door.
How many homeless beavers are in there?
Oh, no, oh my God, the amount of dead, like, mummified bugs and rat poops and just... I think there's a nest in a drawer in the utility bench, and we haven't touched that, but it's getting there.
Flamethrower.
No, because that might light the neighbors on fire, and I think that's against the
functional.
law.
That's not always a solution.
Nuke the site for a little bit.
As much as I would love a flamethrower, I don't think in this case would be very helpful. But it's getting there. Now we just have to take everything to the dump, and then round 2 can begin.
Yeah.
So
I would be.
It's a fun day.
That sounds like the funnest day.
It's nice when when you open the door and it's so overwhelmingly messy that you don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, what
No.
do we do?
As long as stuff is making it into the bin, you're doing it right.
Yes, and we can see the floor. Bikes have now been hung up on bike hooks. Other things have been, because we have those pegboards in the walls, so we put up those special nails. So other things have been hung up, like the garden tools that are proper garden tools, or snow shovels. Everything are up there now. It's just part 2 needs to happen after we cleared everything out. But it looks good, better than before anyway.
You painting it pink?
No.
All
That's
right. All right, let's start this thing. Do that. And do this.
Really big shoe.
Really big shoe. Why is it not letting me make myself... There we go. All right, so I know this is not the most interesting story in the world in some senses. How can Black Lives matter if black minds don't matter? St. Paul BLM founder slams organization for being racist against black children. The takeaway is that there are good and decent people in there, and they're starting to realize, wait a second, these people aren't actually doing anything for us. And because BLM is solidly in with the teachers' unions, they don't really seem to have our kids' best interests at heart either. I'm just happy to see somebody on the inside starting to realize this. You know, they're going to call him all sorts of names.
You know, he came out for school choice, right?
And charter schools.
And charter schools. The case for school choice and charter schools is so well documented, how much better those schools are, how much better schools become, how much better children do, how much better they learn when charter and when there's school choice available and charter schools available. Every single time it beats the classic public education scenario. They always do better. And the left's ignorance of that, what amounts to an uncontestable fact of the superiority of charter schools and school choice, presence, of school choice, is shameful. And it's indefensible. And so this guy comes out and, you know, steps up and does the courageous thing and just speaks the truth, speaks such a simple, well-documented truth. And he's just lambasted for it.
Yep. But he committed the gravest of all sins, Skep. He talked to Fox.
Oh.
That's unforgivable.
The point is what's unforgivable is that he broke their narrative.
Yeah.
You know, and having a black guy come out and, you know, state what's what, you know, in clear-eyed in a clear-eyed way, just say, you know, this is what the truth is. Stop ignoring it. And he's treated worse than I just can't even understand what's going on. I kind of.
It's like it's not really about the thing they say it's about, and that it's really just a grift.
Yeah, it is. It's just all narrative.
It is, and we have cases. I mean, I can refer people to Thomas Sowell's most recent book, which is on educational choice. He has pages and pages and pages of hard data showing things that even charter schools that are that are basically leasing space from existing public schools.
Right.
It's in the same damn building, same neighborhood. The charter schools are kicking the public schools' ass. And the real reason that they don't like the charter schools is because they're not union, the teachers are not unionized, and they don't make all the sweet extra money that teachers get paid now for various bonuses and things that they get. It is a lot harder for the teachers, but I have a feeling a lot of the charter school teachers like the fact that they actually teach students. People choose to go into teaching for a whole variety of reasons, one of which is they find they're okay with making less money if it means they can do something that they find really satisfying.
Right.
And actually being able to do the satisfying part is worth it for a lot of people.
There are actually teachers out there who love to teach.
There are teachers out there that love to teach. And honestly, this is just like when Tiger Woods showed up. It's like, well, Chi-Chi Rodriguez, you better put down the Mai Tai and get out there and start practicing your chipping. Because, you know, this new guy is kicking your ass. Yeah. The public schools are not irredeemable, but they won't be redeemed unless they have an existential challenge. And I'm happy to give it to them in the form of charter schools.
It's good to see people who are or were a part of these organizations speaking out against things like anti-charter school things, critical race theory. They're coming out, and they're subverting, you know, general corporate media to speak their truths. Yeah. And in this case, their truth is the truth.
Well, as I said, you tend to give me the best segues. I know. I still don't know if you're doing it on purpose. That's the funny thing.
You never will.
Yeah, and that's like, well, YouTube censors Brett Weinstein. I prefer pectin clip. YouTube gave the evolutionary biologist and podcaster a warning. If you're tired of cancel culture, no, forget that. Sorry. Big tech social media platforms, as well as a plethora of corporate media, must still be nursing what is highly likely to feel like some very unpleasant fresh and raw egg on their face after they were forced to take an abrupt U-turn in the wake of months of draconian censoring of any mention and even the very possibility that coronavirus might have been human engineered instead of occurring randomly, blah, blah, blah. Now, the thing about it escaping from the lab is there's two different theories about this. One is that they did augment it, and the other one is that this was actually something naturally occurring that was found in a cave by this one researcher they have who just really likes going to caves and looking for coronaviruses. So, leaving the man-made versus naturally occurring aside, the evidence that, or at least the strong implication that this thing escaped from the lab stands. And specifically, he had Pierre Corey on of the FLCCC talking about therapeutics that might do the job. And I'm dancing around the subject very gingerly here because I don't want us to get because we don't have that luster that somebody like Weinstein has. They'll just give us a strike just for the hell of it.
And it's hilarious in a tragic way that he gets busted for the ivermectin clip. But as we spoke about it, this subject last week, I brought up the fact that Brett and Heather were one of the first people to take the initial research and say, this doesn't look natural. The markers are too clean for, the possibility to completely throw away the possibility that this is bioengineered in some manner.
Well, now that people are allowed to talk about it, we might actually see people more qualified than any of us go in and figure this crap out. I mean, if you look at the way RNA forms in DNA, there are rules that govern how it's laid out. And then you look at the natural processes of how things tend to evolve, and there's certainly types of substitutions that tend to occur. Somebody who really knows their shit can go in and look at this stuff and should be able to get a pretty good idea. Yeah, exactly.
They did. And the thing is you're right about that. You really need to be a deep expert in this stuff. For one thing, the things that they were looking for are only found on 0.1% of the genome. So 99.9% of the genome, which is a ton of data, is essentially not looked at, and you've got to find it. The stuff isn't labeled under the microscope. You have to test for this stuff. It's laborious. It's frustrating. This is really hard. This kind of biochemistry is very, very hard, very difficult.
Yeah, every time
it's the biochemistry of tiny amounts. I mean, not even microscopically, way submicroscopically tiny amounts. And the kind of analysis that they have to do is both ingenious, frustrating, tiring. It just wears on these researchers. But people don't realize what's going on. They think, well, there's some kind of scanner, and they punch in the thing. It's like Star Trek. That's not the way this works.
Every time they look at something new, they're basically unpacking the Library of Alexandria with every new strand of DNA. Well, there is so much information.
I think it's closer to being the thing that you said it's not than it used to be. But to be clear, it wasn't was it man-made versus not man-made that I think got him the strike. Not that anybody ever really knows with YouTube. It was mostly talking about therapeutics.
Therapeutics, yeah.
And
that's why I just thought it was weird, especially with the whole, hey, we're lifting the veil on even talking about that theory. It seems odd to me, but I mean, it's YouTube, so they're always pick and choose.
Yeah. Well, when Skep and I were young, the state of the art for something like this was passing some extremely shortwave X-rays through this thing and seeing what kind of pretty patterns it made after you passed the beam through. Mm-hmm. And then all of the stuff for doing chemical assays to sort of figure out if two DNA sequences were the same. Came after that. And now we've actually got things that can go in and take the DNA, sequence it, and shove that information into a computer. But figuring out which sets of, of 4 amino acids in these sequences correspond to which types of gene expression is where it gets to be really tough. Just getting a whole sequence of 4 different letters, just looking at all those, G, A, T, C, U, all of those things is not, it doesn't really get you what you want. Figuring out what the things actually turn into is where it's hard. And that's where the trained virologist comes in. But the point is not whether what he said is true or not. The point is that you've got a doctor, an MD with, who's a published author, who's trained a lot of people. He's an expert in his field and a PhD, and they are having a discussion, and somehow YouTube thinks that they're in a position to decide whether what they're saying should be allowed or not. Why? On what authority other than just the authority of the bully?
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's not our narrative, and that's it.
And he's talking to a biologist. I mean, like...
Yeah. I mean, he's not a geneticist, but they're actually, in a lot of this, they're not talking about the genetics. Again, they're talking about how this particular compound was identified in certain types of soil samples, what it actually did, what its method of action was, a bit about the history of it.
Are you talking about I prefer pectin?
I'm talking about I prefer pectin.
Okay.
And he's certainly capable of having that discussion with him. You don't have to be a geneticist. Any one of us can understand a lot of the science surrounding this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And dude,
it's very accessible.
But I think with Brett's background, he's able to sort of bring out the questions to sort of he's the intermediary, right? From the scientific mind, the jargon, to sort of extrapolate for the audience. Because of his background, he can do that a little bit better than like me or Sargon, say,
Yeah. Well,
and it's a shame that he got this straight.
It is stupid. I mean, and even if it's a warning, it doesn't matter because it has a chilling effect. Anybody who gets one of those strikes knows that the next one means that I'm going to be knocked off the air for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody particularly wants that.
I
mean, I don't want it. I wouldn't want it to happen to minions because, if it may not personally be a big deal to me if I get to take a 2-week vacation. But, there's other people on this channel who host, and I wouldn't want to be the person who ruined it for everybody else. So I have to be a little careful, So, I mean, because Quiz doesn't deserve to take a 2-week break, nor does Della or anybody else. So I feel a more of an obligation maybe than somebody who's just running his own channel. But
social media needs help.
It needs help. Speaking of which,
I know
Nigeria says it suspends Twitter days after president's post remove. Now, again, this is not about whether the guy said something he should or shouldn't have said. It's about the fact that Twitter seems to think that it is in a position where they can regulate speech of an elected official.
Yeah. I mean, what he did say was pretty terrible, but his response was just genius. Okay, well, no Twitter.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't like he was calling for a genocide or anything like that. I mean, I can see where a call to violence, but he was simply saying this is the stance of our government.
Yeah,
you don't get to secede. And I think he's allowed to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine we go back in time and we have Twitter, old-timey Twitter in the 19th century, and the war between the states starts up, and then Twitter's controlled in the and then Twitter decides that Lincoln can't say something about how the Union needs to be preserved.
Mm-hmm. And he also spoke, the president of Nigeria, also spoke out against like people who are rioting. Like there is a violent section to the secessionists who are actively participating in riots and stuff. And he spoke out about that. But of course, can't have political speech on Twitter if it doesn't follow the exact same narratives that come out of, well, the Twitter sphere. Which is a shame because the tools like Twitter, like Facebook, like YouTube, they're so great. It just when there's this, it's not even a filter at this point. It is.
They allowed, if you remember, during the Arab Spring, right? All the information, everything that came out of there was able to be reached to people due to Facebook and probably Twitter and all these other social media.
And for the most part, unfiltered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was amazing because you are seeing information leaked out of areas that before that wouldn't have been easily managed. And now they're turning around and doing essentially sort of the same thing. And you can argue, of course, it's a private company. They have their terms of service and everything. But, you know, it's...
They're literally interfering in foreign political affairs. And
Yeah.
No.
That's right.
This
You know,
has to
but
stop.
if somebody takes out, I don't know, $100,000 worth of ads, some foreign group, and that's supposedly influencing the American election, that's election interference. But
Yeah.
them interfering with the Nigerian president,
That's fine. Mhm.
that's fine. It's fine when we say it's fine. Yeah. Anyway.
I wonder if that actually took a financial hit. I know Nigeria is not the biggest country, but if that affected their income for something like Twitter to have an entire country ban it for the foreseeable future.
Well, I think it probably
Lost all the ad revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many people in Nigeria keep contacting me about financial opportunities. I would think that they would not want to do this. But yeah,
I keep getting people from chat, but
it's not like stopping him from making a statement on Twitter stops the policy.
right.
It's just this is his position. Good or bad, wouldn't you want to know what the position is?
Yes, exactly. Let people talk.
Yeah, I mean,
Let them
how
dig
is
their own graves. Let them have something
almost
put
like
up there.
freedom of press is
Well, no, that's the
enshrined.
freedom of expression argument is very strong. Obviously, the thing of it is when you are in a planned economy type of thing, when you are either in a socialist or fascist, I'm not sure there's a difference anymore, system of government, you know, that freedom of speech is a luxury that socialism and autocracy basically cannot afford. It just causes too much disruption to the way that they want to govern.
I just hope going forward that more countries might take action like this against some of these, like you said, more oligarchical companies that want to control the flow of information.
I did think, yeah, I agree with you. I did think this was kind of interesting from the standpoint of wondering how Jack likes it when somebody, you know, kicks him off the air. There's a kind of it's not a Schadenfreude exactly, because it you know, I'm just disgusted by the whole situation. I'm disgusted by the way Twitter does its censoring, and Nigeria has disgusted me since 1962.
Well, while you're disgusted at big tech,
That
Google
was
diversity
Nigeria.
strat lead who said Jews have insatiable appetite for war is no longer diversity strat lead.
Oh no!
Read the byline too.
My
It's-
goodness.
Yeah, not a fan of homosexuality either, judging from his 2007 blog post.
Oh,
I
this guy's
understand.
a winner.
He's a
Googler-
black guy. He's a black guy.
is. Let's scroll down to it. There, look at that handsome guy right there. That
There you
big
go.
smile.
Yeah.
Google diversity head said Jews have insatiable appetite for war.
You know, like they do, you know, because you know, everybody keeps declaring war on the Jews, and then they get
keep
their
running.
asses kicked,
Mhm.
and then everybody says, "Well, Jews like war." Well, they're getting pretty good at it. You know, you give them a lot of practice, they're pretty
Yeah.
good at surviving.
It seems, yeah, I was gonna say, it seems that it's less about insatiable appetite for war and kind of like a fondness for living free.
Well, when
Yeah,
you
they're
push,
like-
Exactly right, Sora.
when you constantly like declare war on a people and they keep running away, and eventually, oh god, there's the sea. What do we do? Fight. Okay. Yeah, it just
Yeah, well, you've got to admire their gumption. But the reason I'm bringing this up, because I mean, there's idiots everywhere in the world, is that we've seen the same thing happen in the UK. They had the Labour Party, which was, one of the more far left parties.
Mhm.
And they had like this increasing anti-Semitism problem that happened over time. It's like, oh, we have to divest and do all this sort of stuff,
Mhm.
put pressure on them to help the Palestinians. And it seems like that progressives just can't help themselves but be kind of anti-Semitic or even blatantly anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I was
Just
going to
bigoted
say.
in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a problem that they seem to have, and it isn't just in the UK.
Oh no! I mean, look at Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Those are two raging anti-Semites.
Yeah.
Raging anti-Semites. They despise Jews and Israel with every fiber of their being. They've been raised since they were kids to hate Jews specifically. They call it Zionism. That's their pretend fig leaf.
Mhm.
Well, we don't hate the Jews. We hate Zionists. Well, no. What you're saying is I hate Jews. You're just using code. Fuck right off. I have no time for that. None.
Yeah, nor do I. I mean, they certainly have been our friends most of the time. Every now and then we catch them spying on us, which I don't appreciate. But
That's you know what, the people who catch them, and even the people who are affected by that, understand exactly what they do and why they do it.
Oh, I
And
know.
That's a grand game. The intelligence it's a weird field.
Well, they're not within the
don't
Five
take that
Eyes
on board.
consortium. Well, there's a number of intelligence sharing arrangements that we have. And as
Yes.
far as I know, they are not part of the most sort of the closest friends that we have, like in the Five Eyes and a
Mhm.
number of other things. It's mostly things that are in the Anglosphere, but I know that we are definitely strategic partners with them. We share a lot of information back and forth that's relevant to their area.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. On certain things that are specifically relevant to them, they get access to our deepest intel, at least the products of our sources, if not our sources.
Yeah. But in terms of like the UK and Canada, they get access to just about everything worldwide.
Yeah, well, yeah, Canada's really kind of a state of the United States. It will be
A
soon.
little bit of pillow talk every now and then ain't so bad.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll buy you dinner.
Yeah.
That's right.
Usually do. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just reorganizing things a little bit here. So, are you guys acquainted with what a mesh network is?
Oh, I am.
I know you are. So basically, a mesh network is, instead of having, like, for instance, you've got cable or DSL or something that comes to your house, right? Fiber.
Mhm.
And then that connects to the internet, and then that fiber goes to a router, which then connects to a backbone, which then connects to other things. So basically, it's like a point-to-point connection where it's sort of like a tree. You're a leaf node on a big tree.
Right.
Now, what you can do when you have wireless devices is, instead of having all of these devices connect directly to the net via some connection, instead of having all of your devices basically piggyback off of your Wi-Fi, you can have the devices talk to each other. And so what Amazon is looking at doing here, well, let me just read the thing. The proposal, called Amazon Sidewalk, involves the company's devices being used as a springboard to build citywide mesh networks, meaning the devices basically talk to each other and then proxy that to the internet eventually. That mesh, allowing multiple devices in this to communicate with each other, allows them to extend the reach of their network dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And what they want to be able to do is have, like, your Ring doorway camera be able
That'll
to
be a node on the network.
talk to, like, one of those tile geolocation things that's another Amazon product. And all of these Internet of things will be able to basically talk to each other and eventually find their way onto the net through your Ring doorbell or your Alexa or who knows what else it might be.
It feels like we're creating a giant being. Now we're going to give it some eyes and the ability to sense things, and we're slowly building the ability to think in this gigantic group mind that I think is going to eventually develop some sort of consciousness.
Well, let's see.
I think that's where the internet is headed.
I don't think that's hyperbole, especially when you
No,
have
it's
the
not.
Internet of Things. If you look at the protocols that connect these things, they're fairly simple right now. But you start coming up with more and more elaborate ways to have these things interact with each other, and you're going to see certain types of emergent behavior.
Yes,
It's almost not a
exactly.
question of if, but when.
Yeah, well, it just depends on what choices we make now about this stuff. So let's see.
So-
mesh networks that help simplify the process of setting up new devices, meaning you could get some Amazon Giga and just take it out of the box and press the on button. And instead of you having to enter information about your home network, it just goes out and says, hey, any of my Amazon peeps nearby? And then they just start talking to them, and then they'll find information about how to get to the network from there. So it's certainly convenient. You know, that little button that tells your, it says order more Tide Pods because they keep mysteriously disappearing.
And so the thing goes off and asks your toaster, hey, you know any good
Yeah.
DNS servers?
Yeah. And they just find their way around to these things. So, and extending the range of tracking devices such as those made by Tile. But Sidewalk has come under fire for the apparent lack of transparency with which Amazon has rolled out the feature, as well as the limited time available for users to complete the tricky process required to opt out. You should be able to opt out easily. It shouldn't be a tricky process.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Other critics have expressed concerns that failing to turn the setting off could leave customers in breach of their internet service provider's terms and conditions. I don't know if most of you have ever read said terms and conditions, but there is a line in most of the boilerplate about things like telemetry. You are not supposed to use your home internet connection for certain types of 24/7 data gathering and transfer. And that is actually against the terms of service for most home internet packages.
Huh.
Yeah. But, you know, this is still just sort of special pleading. I mean, on the one hand, I can totally see where this is a good thing. Mesh networks are super awesome. It's part of how when cities try to provide free Wi-Fi to their citizens, as happened in a few places, essentially, instead of having every pole top thing connected to the internet, they form a mesh. And they basically transfer packets on behalf of each other to get them to and from the wired internet. That's how you provide free Wi-Fi to an entire city, if you're in one of those places that does that.
How
It
would
uses
this-
a mesh network.
How do you think this would affect like packages that you buy? Would everything just sort of be streamlined and everybody in, you know, city X pays $50 a month for internet or whatever, and the coverage is total? Like whether it's your hardline connection at home or out in the street on your wireless devices, like you buy a new device, you turn it on, boom, it connects.
Well, here's the issue. So I don't know if any of you have any experience with wireless range extenders?
Oh,
Not really.
yeah. Repeaters, I call
like
them.
Velo?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
I
like
have
that.
Velo.
Yeah. Well,
That's what I
essentially,
use.
that's a small mesh network in your house, but it doesn't have a whole lot of nodes.
Right.
So what you're doing is you're taking that kind of thing and expanding it. Now, what the problem is that every single hop that it has to make between nodes on the network adds a significant amount of latency. So
That's what
the
I was
part-
just going to ask you about.
Yeah, the part in the network where you say, "Hey, did you get that thing I sent you?" And then you get the response back saying, "Yeah, I got that thing," or "No, I didn't." That actually takes a long time, and that overall slows things down quite a bit. But for these little devices, they don't care. They can spy on you quite effectively with relatively low amounts of bandwidth. So your Tide Pods reorder button, your toaster, your LG refrigerator, your Amazon Alexa, and your Ring doorbell can all just have a good time with each other. And it's not a terrible idea, but doing
They'll
it
be
without telling
laughing at
people
you.
doing it without telling people ahead of time is no bueno, in my opinion.
No.
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, if you imagine somebody who lives near you who has some Amazon device but doesn't have it hooked up to their wireless, is going to be using your bandwidth that you pay money for to function.
Yeah. That I don't like.
Yeah.
My bandwidth alone.
Freeloaders. So anyway, sorry, I don't know if I did a very good job of explaining this.
No, you did. You did. I actually understand. Like, from someone who doesn't know anything, I actually kind of get a gist of what's going on. And
The nature of the story is such that
So
it's a bad thing to do without telling somebody, but once they do it, they do it.
yeah, I've kind of already given up on public privacy.
Yeah,
Okay, let me look at what
just
do we
bend
have
over
here?
and wait for it to be over.
Yeah.
Let's see. I cannot find the instructions
Too
to
old at
opt
this
out.
point,
Yes,
Skep.
that's probably because they don't care about us. Let's see. Green Badger. Right. Good evening. Good evening, Green Badger.
good evening.
Elowin says, "Does this include guest networks as hospitals and malls, etc.?" It may. It very well may.
It probably will actually.
Yeah.
Well, even if there's like a main node that's connected to a traditional network, the way you cover that entire mall is often via a mesh network.
Right.
You can either do that or you have to essentially run
Wire.
an Ethernet cable. And the reason you do run the Ethernet cable is often more about supplying power over that cable to the extender than it is about actually extending the network. So you can run sort of campus-wide networks using a combination of mesh and wired. Or they can be almost primarily mesh or completely wired. It just depends on the circumstances that people find themselves in. But it's certainly cheaper to do it as a mesh in many instances. Let's see.
Seems like a good tool.
If you don't have your wireless device hooked up to the cloud to the COVID password in Israel, you're probably going to jail. Okay. Let's see. The nods could be wired. Yes, absolutely. Or nodes, either way.
Yeah.
Just catching up with chat. You have to opt out. What? Yeah, no kidding. All right. So apparently I didn't do a too terribly bad job here. Let's see. Let's think of an appliance orgy when Harry mentioned the fridge and Alexa having a good time. Yeah, actually, Elowen, you understood my intent completely. That is actually what I was alluding to. Thank you.
Would this technical question, would this be more vulnerable or less vulnerable to types of cyber attacks, hacks, those sorts of things?
Doesn't really
Doesn't
matter.
change it.
No?
No.
So if you and I are on the same mesh network, Skep, there's no real difference than a traditional network?
No, you still have the same security problems
okay.
that you always had. It doesn't really change the security. It might provide more hack opportunities, might provide more targets.
There is a notwithstanding here. Sorry, Canadians. The only thing that it does allow would be the ability to intercept encrypted traffic more easily. So if you pretended to be a node on this network, you would be privy to encrypted traffic, but that's no different than any other Wi-Fi type thing.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
it's just a bigger target. Like,
So it's no
As I
less
said.
secure than Wi-Fi, but it's not as secure as wired.
Right, of course.
Because in order to intercept the packets on a wired network, you have to
You have to
basically get
physically
physical
attach.
access, or you have to hack one of the routers.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, I don't want to bore chat too much here with this. Where are we going next? Oh, yeah, meat. We all like having meat. Unfortunately, I think everybody's already heard about
Speaking of
this, right?
cyber attacks,
Are you amused by this, Sora?
just how you phrased it. That's all.
Yeah, well, JBS, which is one of the biggest meat processors in the U.S., got cyber attacked. And because of that, a bunch of beef processing and pork processing went offline. And this is just another aspect of the pipeline story. But I think in this case, they didn't pay them off.
oh, so it was the same people?
I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't.
Oh,
really
I
matter
see
in a
what
lot
you're
of
saying.
ways.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's continuing the narrative. Yeah, okay.
So there is some additional analysis on the pipeline thing, and they found that there was one password that gave them VPN access, basically access to the private network, which somebody had used at an external site, which was in a big release of hacked material that was put out onto the darknet. And so it may be that just because one password That's one guy who worked at the pipeline company used the same password on the company net and for a private thing, so that they got access to the network and then had their way with it. Sorry, Elowen. I believe, though, that the real culprit isn't so much, I mean, because the thing about security is you need concentric rings of security. And stopping them from getting on your network is only one part of it. If it's basically you have access to our network and then all of our unpatched Windows servers are just there for the easy pickings, that doesn't really constitute a security strategy. You know, you have to actually assume that any one piece of it is not sufficient to protect things. When you're talking about something that controls so much of the economic vitality of the United States, you don't just rely on your VPN to protect all of your assets. There needs to be more to it than that. But you're going to be seeing more and more people forcing you to use two-factor authentication and other stuff because of this. But when in reality, they should have secured stuff behind the firewall as well. This is just dumb.
Yeah, I think most of these exploits are eminently preventable. When I read the postmortems on them, there are things. A lot of stuff is coming out just from human intelligence, where somebody walked through the place and took a picture with the camera of somebody's monitor that had all the passwords taped up on the side. And then they go in, there's no two-factor authentication, so they log in from, a device that's unfamiliar but unknown to the network. The network doesn't push back at all, and they're in. They're administrative. They have some sort of administrative privilege. It's very easy how these people get into these things, put malware on there, put something like, it'll look non-threatening, like something official, and you click on it and that code runs and you are effed. You are seriously hosed at that moment.
Yeah, well, we made everybody change their passwords so often that now they write them down and put them on sticky notes on their monitor.
Exactly. It's a big those sticky notes are a tremendous help to us.
They are. I can't remember. I think Sora's seen it. You seen the movie Hackers, the one with
oh my God,
Angelina Jolie.
Best
Isn't that a great bad movie?
It's the best movie.
It's pretty darn awesome.
Is it, how accurate is it, Harry?
Well, not very.
That's what,
for the time, they did actually capture a lot of stuff, sort of dumpster diving and going through the printouts to get just a crumb to get access to the network. But let's just say the visual representation of the hacking process may have been deceptive. But yeah, no, that's actually a lot of fun. I totally recommend that movie.
Okay.
It's just, but I mean, don't watch it to learn about hacking. Watch it because it's just fun.
Yeah. All right.
And Angelina Jolie gets.
Yeah, there's a little fan service in there, but it's a good movie. I really like that movie. Let's see. Are there any questions about this before we move on? No. Okay.
No.
Good. So, let's see. Pork prices are going up. This is related to what we're talking about because not only are people getting hacked, but it just turns out that beef, it's what's for dinner, but it's also a lot more expensive. You probably have already noticed the price of some of these things going up at the grocery store.
Yeah, have you noticed that everything's going up, particularly meat and oil? Petroleum and food basically are going up at a rate, it looks like about 6% per year now.
Well, energy is a huge input into this sort of production.
Yep.
Everything involved in this in terms of all the refrigeration, the transportation, just raising the cattle, all of it is very energy intensive.
And it all that has to get bought with dollars, and those dollars are losing their value.
Well, one of the
although Jen Psaki did say that is just transitory.
Yeah, it's
Shit.
just transitory because she's like super clued in, and Janet Yellen, oh, she's the best.
She's the
Really.
best. There's nobody
She's so good.
authoritative.
Yeah, she is. Well, the problem here, there were some interesting little tidbits buried in all this news. One of them, the one that I liked, is they were talking about how people's habits had changed because of the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of people had to learn how to make a roast.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, with a lot of restaurants reopening, that plus people's changing habits in terms of their home cooking, that there's actually an increase in demand. It's not just
I can see
a
that,
decrease
yeah.
in supply.
We had our meat surge about 5 months ago. The latest one, where it jumped about 10, 6, 7, 8%, something like that.
Well, just think about all these people who go to the Brazilian steakhouses and get the meat sweats. It's going to cost a lot more money to go to one of those places pretty soon.
Yes, it will.
It's funny though. I've been buying less meat due to the lockdown because less energy I'm expending, the less complex proteins I need to consume. So it seems like it's kind of just personally sort of balanced out a little bit.
No kidding.
Took from my pocketbook to my mouth,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. So there's this. Well, there's no good segue from pork prices going up to this. So we'll just have to
Challenge accepted.
roll with it. I think it was Serenity.
Where do you think the meat ends up, dude?
Yeah, I know. I think it was Serenity who mentioned on stream a few nights ago that they had found evidence of SARS-CoV-2 in the wild back in March of 2019. And I think this may be what she was referring to. Unfortunately, she can't be with us tonight to follow up on that. But yeah, and I just said, look, unless you have a source and can cite where it's coming from, I don't want to put more bullshit out into the universe. Anyway, here's the source. It was Barcelona. Did you guys get a chance to read this?
No, I haven't read this. I don't know why.
Let me give you the précis of it.
Yeah.
What happened was they had samples of the sewage from the sewage system in Barcelona that were frozen and set aside. As good quality control people do. They figured, well, in case we need to go back and see what the hell happened, we should just keep samples of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they went back and looked for evidence of SARS-CoV-2 in the sewage. They didn't find anything in January of 2019 or February, but there was a weak signal for it in March of 2019. Now, coincidentally, this was about the same time as the Mobile World Congress was going on in Barcelona, before anybody starts to jump to the conclusion that Barcelona is where the coronavirus where COVID came from. There were a lot of people in from out of town, as in from all around the world, and many of them in from China.
Mm-hmm.
It's entirely possible that there were people who had COVID and that we did not know about it because the flu that was going around at the time covered up the signal. That's the gist of this paper. They actually didn't see anything later in the subsequent months until later until I guess early in 2020. So it was only during March of 2019 that they had this weak signal until, of course, things started to blow up everywhere. It's certainly an interesting piece of information.
Sorry.
What
are they going to do with that information though?
Well, it gives us a better idea of how the thing may have been transferred. If it was sort of naturally occurring or it was released from the lab or what have you, there's supposedly people from the lab got sick before all this sort of kicked off. It looks like there were human beings that had this virus as early as the beginning of 2019.
You know what I'm going to tell you is that the Chinese Communist Party is going to use this information and say there was an outbreak in Europe. It originated in Europe. They've been trying to sell the story that it originated in Italy.
Yeah,
that's bullshit. If
For
there was
years,
an outbreak,
of course,
if there was an
absolutely.
outbreak that you would see a signal in April, May, June, July, you don't see an outbreak. If there was no outbreak there, it would have shown
I'm
up
just
in the
saying,
subsequent months.
they will sit there and bald-faced lie to you. They will sit there and absolutely tell you a lie, and they'll use this.
Well, they've been trying to blame those poor pangolins all this time.
They've blamed everybody but themselves at this point.
Yeah, I love a good pangolin burger as much as anybody
Blame
else.
the pangolins, the penguins, American Marines. Like, I mean, just you can't trust a word that they're going to say about anything at this point.
Well, it's not in their self-interest to tell the truth, and they're not dumb. They may be many things, but they're not dumb.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Evil, but not dumb.
But it also helps Sora. It helps them track the progression of it.
Mhm.
So if, let's say, they find something that was in February of 2019 or something, it's just connect the dots, right?
So they're looking for traces of this in the sewage. There isn't, as far as I know from scanning over this, there's not enough there that they can do like a full sequence and tell you exactly what strain it was.
Yeah.
They can tell you that there was coronavirus in the sewage, but in terms of telling you which variant, no. They just know that it had certain chemical markers that they were able to identify.
Yeah.
It just means that somebody in Barcelona who had coronavirus pooped at some point in March. And that's pretty much the gist of it.
So March 12th. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
And
so
it's,
Serenity was right.
What's also interesting here is that case is hidden by the flu. I wonder if that can be turned around and said, well, see, there is a good reason why we are labeling everything as COVID now, because look at this study, we could have been more forewarned if it were not for the flu, and now everything is COVID. I know it's a bit of a stretch, and probably the intelligent people aren't going to say anything like that, but I'm wondering if anyone will try to put that on Facebook or something. I don't know where that kind of information goes to.
Even if they did, you wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll just shadow ban it because in addition to banning people, they just shadow ban people. I mean, we haven't even factored in that.
Yep.
I've been shadow banned on Twitter for so long.
It's like, why do people suddenly not care what I have to say on Twitter? It's like
No
I'm
kidding.
I'm shouting into the abyss and nothing's coming back.
And I'll tell you, when they shadow banned me, I was going from, having 2 or 3 tweets a day that would have, 4,000 or 5,000 interactions. And that dropped to having 1 tweet a day that would have a few hundred interactions. It's just absolutely throttling. When I put out a tweet, about 3 people see it.
Yeah. Yeah, but to answer the earlier question, which is sort of being talked about in chat, if there was an outbreak in Barcelona, we know what that looks like.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like this. This isn't an outbreak. This is probably one guy who was sick in his hotel room.
Yeah, on his way back from China.
On his way back from China or to China.
Right.
I don't want to undersell how many people go to Mobile World Congress. I mean, it is a big event if you're involved with cell phones and tablets and things.
And Barcelona itself, it's a very big touristy destination.
Yeah, never mind him. He's from Barcelona. Okay.
Barcelona.
Okay, so in terms of just pure cringe and evil, I thought, why don't I go look at what's on the World Economic Forum and see if
here comes the fun part of the show.
I can be pissed off about. Well, first of all, this guy wearing the white pants. I don't know about this. I guess it's before Labor Day, so that rule doesn't kick in. But what the hell is going on with those shoes? What is
no. The outside pocket. Don't stray away. You were just pointing at it.
This?
That is a no.
Yeah.
Outside pocket, no. Stop
It's
it.
a cargo. It's a white.
You can have cargo pockets.
Cargo pant.
No, these shoes are terrible. Look at these pointy, stupid. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a holster pocket. That's no good.
Yeah, that's no good. Anyway, forget this idiot. 7 chief economists on how to solve the pandemic's labor market paradox. So the current thing that they're talking about in the news, which we mentioned first, is that there are all these job openings, but we can't get people to fill them. What is wrong? So I thought, let's see what the World Economic Forum has to say about this. So all of this is cancer. And I'm going to rely on you, my panel, to talk about why this is all dumb. Would one of you like to do some of the reading from this?
I can read.
Okay, you have the link, so you can read it.
I have it
directly.
open right now. Yeah,
Okay.
I have it open. Okay.
All right, I'll try to keep up with you. Go ahead.
All right. So, are we on the verge of the roaring 20s, or will continued unemployment and economic hardship stall the post-pandemic party for the foreseeable future? Actually, it depends on the country, the sector, the workers, gender, age, income, and skills, and how policymakers worldwide respond to structural shifts in the workforce. Quote, while there are expectations that a robust economic recovery will occur in the second half of 2021 with the rollout of vaccination against COVID-19, the global economy is still facing high levels of uncertainty, and there is a risk that the recovery will be uneven, end quote, according to an International Labour Organization analysis. In 2020, around 255 million full-time jobs were lost worldwide, approximately 4 times greater than during the global financial crisis in 2009, says the analysis.
Yay.
Holy crap.
Yeah,
Yeah, how many people died?
that's not, no.
That's not relevant. Sorry, never mind. Ignore me. Please carry on.
And the losses will keep coming. Cheerful. In the optimistic scenario, we could see a loss of 36 million full-time jobs in 2021, up to as many as 90 to 130 million in the worst case. I don't know if they know what optimistic means. Furthermore, continued job losses will not be evenly spread. We can expect massive losses in sectors like hospitality, arts and culture, retail, and construction. Hitting women? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Sorry. I
That's a
misunderstood.
job. Hitting women. Apparently, that's a profession. I didn't know that.
I think this may
Let me
have
show you
been
my pimp hand.
slightly
Professional woman hitter.
Yeah,
hitting women, young people, and low and medium.
all cultures are beautiful, Sora.
The lowest paid workers, the hardest.
I would hope you'd be hitting the women the hardest.
My eyes were going faster than how I was reading it, and it startled me.
Yes.
At the same time, we could see job growth in high-skilled sectors and occupations such as information communication and financial insurance activities,
Yeah.
deepening inequality.
Suck it, cruise ship people.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
These
So-
are
well,
always,
other than
these are
other,
always that are
it's-
hit the most.
well,
though.
other than the women affected most part of it,
Yeah.
I think this analysis is. I mean, there's some parts that are true. There's some parts that are not true. The part about everything being screwed up and a bunch of people losing their jobs, yeah, that part's true. But there's this. What they're saying is some sectors are going to see more job loss than others. I think we can accept that's true as well.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is anybody here aching to get on a cruise ship?
No.
No.
Not even
Yeah.
pre-COVID. But
Well, don't forget that the largest growth of unemployment during this time has been government.
Yeah. Well, this
Oh.
is just the setting of the stage. Let Sora paint
Sure.
more of a beautiful word picture for us before we look at what these 7 economists have to say about it.
okay. All right. And we're looking just under this graph here.
Yes.
Figure 3. All right. While none of this is surprising, recovery is complicated by a perhaps unanticipated paradox. Millions remain unemployed after losing work in the pandemic, but businesses say they can't find enough people to hire, the Financial Times explains. This is especially the case in some of the world's wealthiest nations, and in the very same sectors facing the biggest losses over the last year and a half. There's a growing chorus of complaints in America about a shortage of labor, even as unemployment remains high, continues the Financial Times report. Delta Airlines canceled 100 flights in April due to a crew shortage. A McDonald's in Florida is paying potential workers $50 to simply show up for an interview. Similarly, in the UK, restaurants are offering vouchers to customers and bonuses to employees who refer successful applicants. While Queensland, Australia is offering cash and subsidized travel to workers for the surfing destination's tourism sector. There are 3 potential explanations for the puzzling shortages: over-generous benefits, fearful workers, and a real allocation of labor between industries, explains The Economist. In the US, for example, unemployment benefits in some states are more than twice the minimum age, notes Financial Times. Necessary during pandemic-induced lockdowns, but now thwarting businesses on the verge of recovery who need these workers to return. This is what is happening in BC with CERB, by the way. So how do we unlock this labor market paradox, ensuring a robust, inclusive recovery that addresses the needs of both businesses and workers? Ahead of the Jobs Reset Summit of 2021, the World Economic Forum asked 7 chief economists for their views. Here's what they said.
Okay, so first of all, there's some bullshit that has snuck its way into just their setting up of the discussion. They're saying that it was necessary to pay people above minimum wage to not go to work. There's only one circumstance in which that would be true, which would be if people had money, but they were essentially afraid to spend it. And you essentially were giving money to these other people to go out and sort of prime the pump on the economy. That's sort of what they were saying, why they needed an economic stimulus. Now, I don't know if there was any evidence that there were people who had a lot of money that were just hanging on to it because they were afraid to spend it. Without some kind of data along those lines, we're just taking their word for it. I mean, it could be that, or it could just be trying to buy people votes, or people's votes. There are a lot of reasons why they did what they did.
And here, regarding the paying more, so I'm sure that probably most places had this, but there was a moratorium on rent for a very long time. So you have people who don't have to pay rent because they are in minimum wage service industry jobs that all have been shut down because of COVID lockdowns. So they don't have to pay rent, and they are given subsidies like CERB, or they may be, and then from then on, employment insurance. And so they're like, well, there's no point in going to work until, say, December. So 6 months after they can rejoin the workforce, because well, I don't have to pay rent right now. It's not being pushed. It's being pushed back so I can either save money or just have fun. I mean, I'm not saying they're smart people, but this is what some of what I've been hearing, because I live in a campus. So this is why I started hearing a lot around. There's no point in going to work. I'm getting CERB and I don't have to work. So I'm getting paid maybe the same or a little bit more than I got at my part-time job. And I don't have to deal with people, and I don't have to work.
Yeah,
so
I was actually really proud of people. I was here in not Silicon Valley, and I heard some people talking about this at the beginning of the lockdown. And they said, I actually would make more money staying home and not working. And then they said, but I would never do that because, I'm not that kind of person. And they were having this conversation between them that I overheard, talking about, oh, no, I would never in a million years do that. These people were too honest and too proud to even consider doing that. And the people who did bother to work during all this, a lot of them, I think, have a pretty low opinion of the people who were staying out longer than they needed to.
Yeah.
Milking the system. It's like,
is there enough for it to constitute social pressure to not do that?
God, I hope so. It's
against
really,
that behavior.
Well, because the press doesn't give us real information anymore.
No, it doesn't.
And even social media is so distorted that you don't know what to believe until you walk out into the world and use your freaking ears.
Yeah.
Look and see what's written on the graffiti. Listen to what people actually say. I've noticed a disturbing lack of large big rig trucks on the road recently, and it's a big downturn. And I'm just like, this is interesting. Usually I'm trying not to get run over by these people, and now there are very few of them all of a sudden. It's actually very startling. But anyway, before
that will show up as empty shelves, by the way. That's the way that will manifest.
Yeah, and there are far fewer trucks on the road in the last few days than normal. Very, very strange.
A lot before we go on, a lot of smaller, what colloquially we call mom and pop shops, privately owned, small to medium business. A lot of them, I'm just saying a lot because I don't know the actual numbers, have been shut down. Like they are gone forever. They are not reopening when they are, or if their area has allowed them to reopen. A lot of these businesses, and I can imagine that these people in normal times, that would usually be because the place went belly up or there was a tragedy or something. With this and them paying benefits, depending where you're from, what benefits you get it varies. But I can understand how somebody in that position who's worked their way up, who's built a business for themselves and then lost it because they didn't lose it. Somebody took it from them. And I can see them not wanting to get a McJob or slinging coffee at Starbucks. I know that's not a huge percentage of what's going on, but I can see it being at least one point of view as to why there is a little bit of a shortage. Sorry.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, there's a lot to digest here. We've got 7 pieces of stupid to get through. First is capture data on structural shifts, where they talk about the hit to the employment by sector. Obviously, leisure and hospitality got hit the worst with about 20%. Mining and logging, education and health services. You start getting into the single digits pretty quickly. But essentially, leisure and hospitality just took it in the shorts.
And yet retail is almost at the bottom. That's interesting. I would think that they would have been, I guess, with big box stores still being open and online. Yeah, you still have those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surge. It's a surge of online. For a little while here, they had to do Saturday deliveries after everything opened last year, just to get everybody's orders, like to try and get kind of the post back on track.
Well, there's the histogram, and then there's the dot. Now, the dot represents the maximum decline since February. And the dot for leisure and hospitality is at 50%.
Yeah, that's what's impressive is that the change. Also, you have to look at each one of these industries and ask yourself, how labor intensive is this? Because that's will actually give you the magnitude of the decline in employment in each category. In stuff like leisure and hospitality is probably one of the most labor intensive. Labor intensive, meaning people intensive. You need a lot of people to do leisure and hospitality.
Yeah.
And seeing a big decline there represents a large number of people, losing their job, as opposed to retail trade, which, believe it or not, is not really labor intensive until you get to like a big box store. That's a little bit of a different model.
And this data is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so it's not necessarily the source of it is actually not terrible. Now, I just want to read
I use them. Yeah. Sorry.
I want to read a little bit of this one section, and then I'll hand it back to Sora. Working from home and online, retail created mismatches. The urban barista is out of work, but cannot commute for a job in a village pub. Childcare issues and outdated gender stereotypes have undermined female participation in the workforce.
Bullshit.
Although more flexible working arrangements may improve that in the future. Reduced barriers to entry in a more virtual world have combined with more free time to encourage entrepreneurism. Every TikToker seems to sell product via a merch link. Yeah, them making this comment about every TikToker selling a product via a merch link is almost as good as when that, I forget which candidate it was, said that we could solve some of the farm problems by just growing arugula because it's a valuable cash crop. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just grow arugula. It's fine. You'll make tons of money if everybody just grows arugula because that's the way the world works.
They did that with avocados years ago. Remember that, Harry? Do you remember when avocados were gigantic and then there got to be too many avocados in Southern California?
Yeah, thank God Sanguine's not here because my fear is he knows about how they're pollinated.
Cauliflower's racist, and you should plant yucca instead.
Oh, wait, I'm thinking of figs. Never mind. I can't even get my own story straight. Okay, so people may return to the historical norm of having a portfolio of incomes rather than a single job. Unfortunately, labor market data remains in the mentality of a century ago. These structural shifts tend to be glimpsed in the shadows rather than captured in official data. This Paul Donovan, chief economist of UBS Global Wealth Management, is a nitwit. I don't know. Say something, Skep.
Well, okay. Childcare issues and outdated gender stereotypes have undermined female participation in the workforce. Now, wait a minute. Stop right there. First of all, you can say childcare issues, are a pain in the ass, and you have to work around them, and that is possibly true. It possibly has an impact, but unless you have hard data, you cannot say that outdated gender stereotypes have undermined female participation in the workforce. That is absolute bullshit. That is nothing but lip service to the lefty narrative. That's virtue signaling. That's virtue signaling in an article. That's all that is.
Yeah. Never let a good crisis go to waste is what progressives say.
That's exactly right. And and they're taking advantage of that. We know that part of the problem is outdated gender stereotypes. Yeah, right on. You're woke, man. Woke as fuck.
Yeah. Well, we're going to just solve all of this with robots. Automation may solve this labor supply problem, according to Karen Harris, managing director, Macro Trends Group, Bain and Company.
She doesn't look like she's worried about barriers to the workforce.
So, can you read some of this autism, please, Sora?
Sure.
Just up to the picture.
Okay. The labor shortages currently plaguing the U.S. economy are likely to resolve as the recovery continues. However, a more labor-scarce environment could emerge over the coming decade due to demographics. These labor supply issues could be especially acute in countries like China and Germany, where the total labor force is already shrinking. Higher levels of automation may ultimately solve this labor supply problem. Recent advancements in automation have brought applications within the service sector, and the COVID-19 pandemic prompted many companies to accelerate their adoption of such technologies. However, labor markets may be unusually tight during the investment phase of the transition to higher levels of automation, as new investment demand is typically the forerunner of a greater productive capacity. In the long term, labor automation will eliminate or redefine many jobs in advanced economies, and it will create opportunities for reshoring that could displace workers in emerging markets.
Okay, so automation and basically technology changing the amount of work that one worker can do is something that has been going on since year minus infinity.
Right.
This is just a thing that happens. When they designed a new plow that worked better in Europe, suddenly people started having food to eat. And these things happen constantly. This is what progress looks like.
Yeah.
So you're always going to see a certain amount of this, but there's an artificial thing that's been happening. In order to get people to even show up for work, sometimes, they're trying to offer all this extra money. So are they automating because there aren't enough workers, or are they automating because the minimum wage is increased? There's a lot of pressure on the price of labor as well as the supply. So it seems like they're sort of burying the lead on this. I think a lot of the automatic burger flipping machines that are going to take away first starter jobs for young people are the result of factors other than just COVID.
I think that's a very salient point, because that early work ethic is not being adopted by, look at what people are saying on Twitter and in media outlets like this. They're completely clueless.
Yeah,
and they don't stick with...
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, Sora.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought, please.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, go ahead, Sora.
I was just saying, would adopting something that England and Australia, I believe Australia has this as well, where they have tiered minimum wage. So, for example, if you are up to 16 years old, like whenever you can enter the labor, say between 13 and 16 years old, you get a minimum wage of this amount, and then 16 to 18 or 16 to adulthood, whatever, you get paid a
Yeah.
different amount. So that way, it basically it incentivizes places like McDonald's, Subway, etc., to hire and train younger kids or young teenagers, and then reintroduces basically that first-time job back. Because that would be a way. I see here there are no young people working in the fast food places or in the quarter shops like I was used to seeing when I was younger. It's mostly they're all
Would you like fries with
middle-aged.
that?
Yeah, you don't really
You don't see that anymore. You see, you want fries
and
with that?
and it's very possible because the managers and the hiring HR people feel that they can trust an adult who has adult problems to be a responsible worker versus say like 16-year-old kid who lives at home, has no other issues except going to school and getting their homework done and coming to work, and they may not be the best workers.
Yeah. Well,
it may be very interesting if splitting that up and adopting something like that will help stimulate, actually get people, out of the house. Because I always like that. I thought that was a very interesting, though it can backfire, meaning that if you are older and don't have previous work experience, then they don't want to hire you, because why should I hire a 20-year-old without previous work experience despite having like degrees when I can just continuously hire cheaper by hiring teenagers.
Yeah.
So
well, the next point here is actually probably a pretty good one. Policymakers must ensure labor shortages don't hamper the recovery. Well, yeah.
Okay.
No
Thank you.
shit.
Let's just take that as a given. Let's just take that as a given. Now, speaking also in the no shit category, Karen, Karin Kimbrough, chief economist for LinkedIn, which is basically Facebook for people who work for professionals or something. She's coming at this from her own angle, which is the hunt for talent is fierce. It's funny how her take on it is so specific to the company she works for. Since the beginning of the year, we've seen a rapid increase in jobs posted on LinkedIn by companies looking to hire. While the increase extends to all industries, there has been a notable rise in the number of open roles in the IT, finance, recreation, and travel sectors. Well, yeah, no kidding. We've already covered recreation and travel's been kind of wiped out. And I think a lot of those people might even be afraid to go back to work, to be fair. I mean, under the best of circumstances, a cruise ship is a floating petri dish.
No kidding. I would not go on a cruise ship for $1 million.
You know you're
going to get sick.
Well, you'll see in some science fiction where the starship is coming in and it's coming up to the station and it has to go through the special quarantine where it passes through the Mufa field, which destroys all biological matter.
Right.
That kind of thing. That's what we need for
but not the
cruise
people
ships.
on board.
No, the people, you get all the people off and then you just push it through this thing.
The
that
boron
just destroys.
scan.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need for cruise ships, because honestly, I would not want to take a black light to a cruise ship.
Yeah. We need a moron scan for Congress, but a moron
no
scan.
kidding.
Hotels are bad enough. A hotel, a floating hotel the size of, Lower Manhattan, worse.
Yeah,
Good
no,
God.
I'm with you all. That I've seen too many films where sickness is the least of your worries if you're out in the middle of nowhere on a boat.
You know what's great is occasionally you'll see video, now that everybody has a camera all the time, where one of these cruise ships will hit really serious weather out at sea.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so easy to disappear and never get found.
Well, I think Skep knows what I'm talking about, where the waves kick in and you're on a ship with a whole bunch of furniture that moves. This is just not...
Of course, the ships I was on did not have that problem, but...
No. They were actually designed to handle stuff.
You ever been on a city bus? Imagine how bad that is, and then multiply that by a bajillion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go on a cruise ship. I'm sorry. Maybe one of those swanky river cruises or something where there's not very many people on it. Maybe no.
Well, sure.
I still
Harry, you just buy a boat.
You can get off the boat and go do stuff in town and then come back and just use it as a crash pad.
Yeah, and
That
find
wouldn't
the
be
boat's
bad.
gone. Yeah. And I'll use all of my swanky California money to buy a boat. Thanks, everybody. That's a good suggestion. So yeah,
Or
Karen,
make friends with somebody who owns a boat.
yeah, policymakers
Calls
must
himself the
ensure
captain.
an inclusive recovery, especially for migrant workers. Can
Oh,
you
yeah.
take care of this for me, please, Sarah?
Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
Despite in-work protection systems, unemployment rose in every country during 2020. However, not all workers were equal in such a context. Okay. Some categories of workers suffered more, and many will likely require more time to find an appropriate job again during the recovery. Among those are migrant workers, men and women who were born in one country but work in another one. Take, for example, two of the major advanced economies in the world, the United States and Germany. While unemployment for native workers increased between 2019 and 2020 by 100.8% in the US and 15.9% in Germany, it increased respectively by 182% and 28.7% for foreign-born ones, almost double, according to the ILO. Does it matter? I believe so, because it might exacerbate tensions amongst groups, especially in advanced economies. Thus, policymakers must create policies to ensure an inclusive recovery. So policymakers are the ones who must prevent culture war.
Well, think about it. There's all these different pieces in the economy, and some of which may have more people who are there either on green cards or
Yeah.
some kind of a visa or
Temporary
even
work
illegally.
programs.
To do seasonal work, yeah.
They might be illegal. Now we're talking about illegal aliens who actually have jobs, right? So we're not talking about freeloaders necessarily. We're talking
No.
about people that are illegally working on construction crews,
Right.
people, which obviously, there's an upside to that too, because you get cheaper people working cheaper construction.
And they work their asses off.
And they work their asses off. And some of these people are working very, very hard in the fields, and there are a lot of Americans don't want those jobs.
Right.
Yeah, to be completely blunt, not all. There are some that definitely would do it, but a lot of these guys are, hardworking people. But the point is that some industries, as they've said above, are more affected than others.
Sure.
So, insofar as many of these people might be working in housekeeping in hotels that have
Restaurants.
nobody in them, those people are going to be laid off. And that has nothing to do with the big, bad, mean patriarchy coming down on these people. It's just the distribution of things. A lot of people change the way they buy food, and which crops got picked, and which things they were able to buy at the store, or which things didn't get moved around. So of course there's going to be some disruption in food stuff.
Mhm.
I can tell you that in agriculture in California, that's where you actually saw your highest rates of COVID infection and the most deaths per capita was in those essential people working in food production in California. It wasn't a catastrophe, mind you, but it still was where you saw the most death. So I'm
Right.
trying to be sympathetic here, but there's just this moralizing overtone here that somehow we have more of an obligation to these people than we do to everybody else. When in
Don't
reality,
you-
the markets just do what the markets do.
Yeah, don't you see that as code of, hey, you better get ready to make a payment straight from the treasury to these people?
Yeah, I think
Right,
that's what
right.
it is. They're seizing on the opportunity. Like I
Yep.
said, I don't want to belittle the hard work that a lot of these people do.
No, not at all.
But hashtag not all of them do a lot of that sort of stuff.
It's very simple. Like, very affluent countries like the United States attract people to work there so that they can make money because there's lots of jobs. When the jobs aren't there, yeah, they're going to go back home. We saw a massive drop in foreign students, temporary foreign workers, all that kind of stuff here in Southern Ontario because of the lockdowns. And the positive after effect of that was rental rates, housing prices, etc. did dip for a little bit. They're on the rise again, but because of that huge exodus of people outside of a huge metropolitan area,
Yeah, Mexico is much better off for the most part financially. There's a lot more opportunity there than there was, say, 20 years ago. A lot of people who did come here have actually moved back, so there may be a number of people that have moved back as well. The key thing is you don't want to make it so that people migrate to your country just for benefits. If they're migrating there for work, that's one thing. If they're migrating there just for benefits, that's a totally different thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of economic refugees.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of people who don't work, well, I mean, who choose not to work, excuse me, regardless of whether they're citizens or not citizens.
Yep.
But anyway, sorry.
And the numbers that he uses here to the from well, according to the ILO, so taken from the stats that they compiled, it would be interesting to know, especially for Germany, since they use that as an example, what effect does that increase of 15.9% of unemployment for native workers? What does that mean in the overall for the country? Because if it's still fine and it's not, I mean, it's not great, but there's still a potential availability, and it's not such a hard hit for the country. It's also another, maybe it's the wrong country to look at.
Yeah, and I look at this very simplistically. The one job that the government has right here is to let these businesses breathe. The best thing government can do is get the hell out of the way and stop screwing things up.
Exactly right.
It's not about government needing to do anything other than just stop and step back and let the world work.
Yep.
We don't need a government program to fix any of these problems. Now, if you want to take responsibility for the damage that you've done, that's a different conversation. But in terms of you're going to call me bad names if I don't prioritize people in a particular way. It's like, no, shut up. So the biggest virtue signal of all is this last one here. Well, this next to last one. Reactivating female employment is fundamental. Sora, would you please?
One moment, sorry.
Oh, sure. You need to take a canine break. I totally understand.
Oh, I'm good. Okay, where are we here? Reactivating female employment is fundamental.
Yeah, this is the World Economic Forum, people. They have our best interests at heart.
Thank goodness.
And it's written by a man. Mansplaining. Ugh. Okay.
He's white knighting. He wants a date really badly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, dude, she's still not going to go out with you.
Move along. All right.
Okay. It's a little econ heavy tonight, guys.
Oh, me. Economics was never so funny.
I agree. Latin America and the Caribbean, or the LAC, is the region worst affected by the COVID-19 crisis. 2020 saw LAC suffering its biggest drop in GDP, negative 7% in a single year on record. Is that actually negative 7%? Okay. With almost 30% of the global COVID-19 crisis, despite its population representing only 8% of the world population. Labor markets were severely affected by both external shocks and lockdowns. Almost 15 million jobs were lost, and again, women have carried an additional burden. The asymmetric impact on female employment is manifesting in several countries in LAC. Women have lost more jobs than men, and the recovery of their jobs has been considerably slower. Reactivating female employment is fundamental for the agile economic recovery, as laid out in the IDB's Vision 2025 strategy to reverse the impacts of the pandemic. In this context, countries should focus on 3 areas: supporting companies and promoting female entrepreneurship, developing new skills, and promoting regulations that allow us to improve the functioning of our labor markets. The goal is to have more productive, resilient, and inclusive labor markets that are adapted to the needs of inclusive societies.
Well, the takeaway from this is why?
Yeah.
Why is the world going to be better off if we prioritize things, or basically put our finger on the scale for this one group that you've identified? How is that going to make things better for everybody?
Well, these ostensibly because they do not have equal rights now. They do not have equal access. They don't have the same starting opportunities that people with white skin have.
I
And
know,
penises.
Cis white males.
I know of one person, at least, I haven't sampled a lot of people, but I know of one person who, after being home, simply decided, I think I like this better. And it was a woman. That's like, my husband makes enough money. Things are fine. I'm just not going to go back to work.
Funny
Yeah.
how that works.
That happens
Yeah.
all the time, though. You have a conversation with your partner or spouse, and
Yeah.
you're in a position, and that's a privilege. And why not? Especially if you have kids. Maybe at the end of everything, wherever you are, whatever school they go to, maybe it's better to have someone at home to make sure that they're actually learning properly.
Maybe they looked over their kid's shoulder during their Zoom classes and realized that that their
Holy
teachers were a
crap.
bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
There are a whole lot of
mild panic.
well, there are a whole lot of maybes here, right? It's
Yeah.
maybe a more progressive tax structure actually disincentivizes people to earn extra money for their household.
And I don't
You
think
know-
it's a
Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't think it's a gender thing either, because it's just anecdotal. But I have two friends, couples, and both the men are actually staying home with the kids now, and the women are working, but they made significantly more than their male counterparts. So I think it's less about the gender and more about the ones and zeros of it all.
Mhm.
It seems more
no.
practical that if one is making 40-50% more than
No,
the
it
other.
says women most affected, you bigot.
Oh,
it says
God
that
damn
right
it.
there.
But, and then
Now
okay,
she's
look
got to
at here.
work.
How
Are you
dare you
kidding me?
disagree with the World Economic Forum?
So it's
I'll
the
go flagellate in the corner.
Latin America and the Caribbean, which is the biggest drop in GDP. This is an area that's heavily tourism based, probably
Yes.
as their major GDP. And
Mhm.
of course, it has a huge drop because the flights are stopped everywhere. No one's going on Caribbean cruises. Even
Visiting the sex
ecotourism. Even
No, I'm serious. It took a huge hit in a lot of those countries. Sorry to derail.
Is there a lot of
No.
sex tourism in the Caribbean?
Mhm.
Okay.
Jesus,
I didn't know.
neither did I, but okay. Learn something new every day. I love this show.
Hi, Poppy.
But yeah, so I can understand, of course, who the main body of labor are. You have the maids, you have restaurant staff, a lot of which are all female, and
Yeah.
of course they're going to lose their jobs because there's no point. Huge fleets of flight attendants are majority female too. There's male flight attendants, of course, but the majority have been women, and they're all laid off.
Yeah.
Or fired completely because the smaller airlines have folded during this time. So yeah, I understand where they're pulling these numbers, but of course, like all statistics, then they're manipulating to show, oh my goodness, look how bad they are. Where in reality, is unfortunately, it makes sense why they are the most affected, just because of the nature of what it is, and it's not even. Maybe go back at the very root of everything. Yes, okay, maybe it's slightly gendered, but that doesn't stop. No one is stopping men to being in that industry. In fact, there are. It's just not to the same amount because of history.
And
so it'll get there eventually.
Let's put a bow on
but-
this. Go ahead and
Hold-
make your
hold-
final comments, please.
And with the say hospitality industry, where yes, a lot of the servers were female, a lot of the back end is in the kitchen is male. But with things slowly opening up, who's coming back to work? Well, the food's got to get made. They don't necessarily have to serve the full complement that the restaurant used to, because now they've got 3 tables outside as opposed to their 15 tables inside. So you're right, there is a little bit of the genderedness into it, but it has nothing to do with the industries itself. It's more just women are more social, men are more technical in general. So those types of jobs, you're going to see some fluctuation, but I think it'll eventually taper back out once, restaurants can reopen fully and those kinds of things.
Yes. Anything from you, Skep, before we move on to the next
we
thing?
can move on.
I want to address one thing. Assassin of the Grey was talking about H-1B visas are a fraud. Not always, but often. I've seen some stuff firsthand. I actually had a customer, one of the few customers I've ever fired, where the guy wanted me to do some work for him, but he wanted me to hand a bunch of it off to somebody who worked for one of his companies, who was there on an H-1B visa. And he knew that he had admitted to me that he could make this guy do it for below market rate because he was afraid that he might get his visa yanked and get sent back.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, you're saying the quiet part that's supposed to be inside your head out loud.
Right. Yeah. The part where we enslave the guy. I'm not supposed to know about that.
Yeah, and I just said, I'm not working with you anymore.
Good for you. Good
Just,
for you,
just
Harry.
go away.
One last-
The guy's name was Aziz, and
Yeah.
around the office we nicknamed him Disease, and that was even before he did that because we just didn't like him.
You know, this guy's going to have such bad karma. He's going to be eaten by crocodiles or something.
Slowly.
He's going to die badly, you know, if he's doing shit like that.
No kidding. All
One
right.
last thing. Fuck
Sure, go
inclusive.
ahead.
Best person available for the job. End of story.
The
Anything
World
else?
Economic Forum is pure cancer, and they can take their new,
Yes, it is.
They can just take all of their crap and just shove it up their collective backside.
I
I
think they
think
like it too
we
much.
need to keep an eye on what stupid things these people say, and maybe next time I won't pick something with quite so much stupidity in it that's quite so long. But these guys are a perpetual lolcow, and we probably need to keep an eye on them.
For us, but they are pretty influential. In
Well,
the
that's
media.
why they need to be soundly
Yeah.
mocked
Yeah.
because that's important.
Gotta keep those people in check.
Speaking of which, we need to have somebody assigned to keeping an eye on the beehose as well, because I want to know what's happening with the beehose. But that maybe next week we can talk about the beehose.
Yeah, definitely. Can I do a public service announcement
Please,
real quick?
knock yourself out.
Yeah, this is for everybody in chat. If there is a problem in chat, would you please DM me, and let's not take the law into our own hands, put people in timeout, delete messages, and so forth. We give out a lot of wrenches here, and with great power comes great responsibility. But we would prefer that the show's hosts or a co-host who's on the show take care of these matters and address them rather than have you guys putting people in timeout, if that'd be all right. Thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. The G7 is... G7 finance ministers agree global minimum tax of at least 15%. Now, this is going to require some context, I think. In a nutshell, well, do you want me to explain this, or would you like to explain it, Skep?
I'm sorry. I was.
Have you had a chance to look at this particular article?
No, I have not.
Okay.
This was
So,
one of the ones I did not read.
So
what,
if we
what
go
are we
back-
talking about here?
if we go back a few weeks, Janet Yellen was busy talking about how maybe so that we don't end up losing all of our businesses when we jack our corporate rates up to 28%, maybe, or 32% or whatever it's going to be. What we could do is we could just talk to all the other developed nations and just agree that we're all going to charge the same rate. Wouldn't that be swell? So by colluding that way, no countries would be incentivized to cut their corporate tax rate in order to get businesses to move there for an advantage.
Yeah, this is insane. Anyone who taxes corporate products effectively is putting a throttle on their economy, a throttle on creativity, a throttle on innovation, a throttle on development, a throttle on all the good things that free enterprise gives us. Corporate taxes on corporate profits and taxes on capital gains, the rationale for that just escapes me. It is nothing but a money grab by corrupt government, and it does terrible, terrible harm to the economy. It causes so many little suboptimal behaviors that people do to cope or get around those things. You have corporations that have been in business for 50 years and they've never made a profit.
Mm-hmm.
There are corporations like that because they don't want to pay the tax. They can't function like normal corporations. They can't have a normal relationship with their shareholders. And when you force a corporation to have compensating behavior like that, the person who comes out on the short end of the stick is the people who finance the operations of the company by either lending it money or buying its stock. It just absolutely infuriates me. We should have 0% tax on capital gains, and which is money that's been taxed many, many times before it gets to that point in the market. Infuriates me.
Well, the companies make money. The companies pay vendors and they pay their employees. The employees pay personal income taxes. The employees of the vendors pay personal income taxes. A whole bunch of other taxes are layered on top
people who
as well.
People who sit on the board and get an inflated salary that comes out of those corporate profits pay taxes on that money.
The only reason that you tax these companies is because you want to hide from the individual voters the fact that all these taxes are being collected. I'll just take a little bit over here and a little bit over here and a little bit over here, and you won't even notice. You won't even notice the part of your Social Security and your workers' compensation and stuff in the U.S. that your employer pays on your behalf. It doesn't even show up on your pay stub. All you see is, oh, look, God, they took 7% of my income to put it into a Social Security that I'll probably never get. Well, congratulations, it's actually more than that, because the employer puts just as much and more for some other things in on your behalf. And so you're only seeing part of the tax. And so by taxing these corporations, they can just sort of hide it from people, because God forbid they find out just how much money the government takes. It's this huge break on the economy. Because all the money that that these companies pay in taxes on your behalf, and payroll taxes, for instance, and taxes on the earnings, takes away from money that they could be paying employees.
And this seems like it's being obfuscated by their statement, the last paragraph there, as just in reality, it's just another wealth transfer.
Your real income is higher and your real tax rate is higher. People just don't realize it. But so they've got this 15% plan, and you might say, well, the good news is that's actually quite a bit less than Janet Yellen wanted. She wanted it to be the high rate that Biden was going to make up. However, this did not. This isn't the whole story. The whole story is, right now, a country like Switzerland or Ireland actually has very low corporate tax rates. There's only a few countries that are actually below this. And what this is going to allow the U.S. government to do is, suppose you say that the income from some patent or some invention is actually attributable to, that's actually managed by our Ireland branch, so we don't pay U.S. taxes on that. What the U.S. will be able to do under this proposal is essentially charge the difference on it. So if Ireland only charges a 7% rate on it, the U.S. will come in and take another 8% just because.
Right.
Because Ireland isn't charging the minimum.
Yeah, we're the government. We're taking your money because we can.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
Yeah, so it's in this follow-up article, which I didn't link. There's a graph here.
Yeah, this latest economic forum with the G7 has been a complete shit show.
It is. It is. It's the not smoke-filled room where the people who really run everything decide how shit's going to happen.
Yeah. And how much money of ours they're going to take and give to other people.
Yeah, well,
Such
you
collusion.
don't know.
In a lot of cases,
anyway,
not even in our country.
We like to end on slightly less contentious sorts of things. Let's see. We have this little bit, because this falls into the part of China is asshole, basically.
Oh,
a
yeah.
piece of space junk has damaged part of the International Space Station. Damaged, but not broken. So there's all this space junk that's up there. And every time the Chinese practice their anti-satellite warfare and blow something up into a million little pieces, they're adding just more and more crap that makes space kind of dangerous. So space is simultaneously very big, but a lot of stuff sort of in these orbits where we put our stuff, there's a lot of crap up there. And-
lot of crap.
Yeah.
And with
Ugh.
new crap also can sometimes change vectors of pieces. And if we're not careful and do something about this, sometime soon it could be fairly bad.
Well, when you're
I don't want to
moving
get
at
too much up on the...
Well, when you're moving at extremely high speed, running into anything is a bad idea because unlike the Starship Enterprise, you don't have a deflector dish. We
Right.
don't have that technology right now.
Well, just think, not only do we have the space station up there, we have our internet satellites, communication satellites, all sorts of different satellites that we require on a daily basis that can easily be taken out with just a floating piece of debris.
Well, there's there's several different types of
Paint
orbits. So essentially, there's low Earth orbit where things seem to be zipping around relative to the Earth at pretty good clip. And those can be polar orbits, those can be equatorial orbits. Those are different kinds of orbits that you get. A lot of military stuff that we don't know a lot about tends to go on polar orbits and
Polar
very low.
orbits and also eccentric orbits,
Yes.
where so that they can have a very, very low perigee.
Yeah.
Interesting.
To take pictures of things.
Yes.
You might say.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing
Like
that
UFOs.
the main thing we want to do is not make more of this crap, because it makes all of the things we want to do in space a lot more dangerous and a lot more expensive. I mean, as it stands right now, even without human garbage, there are micrometeorites and things that occasionally perforate things we have in
You don't
space.
have to worry about the micrometeorites. The things you have to worry about are paint chips, that are coming in at 15,000 miles an hour. A paint chip that hits, it actually hit the Canadarm on the ISS, and it put a hole in that thing. Looks like a 50 caliber round passed through it.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so much kinetic energy in these things.
That was they think a piece of paint.
Well, that's where you get the CSI team. The CSI team comes in with the special equipment, identifies the color of the make and model.
Right, exactly.
And then we track it back to whichever aspect.
Track it back. The Chinese satellite blew up.
Space tracks.
It was China. It was China. A lot of the space crap that's up there is China.
Now, like 99% of the individual fragments, when their satellite blew up, now it's 99% of all the fragments up there are Chinese.
Yeah,
as a result of that one explosion.
So we could move our shit up to higher orbits, which is very, very expensive. We could hope there's a big solar flare that heats the upper atmosphere and expands it and drags this shit to oblivion. But I'm not wishing for a Carrington level event just to clear out space junk.
I was just going to say that's like a Carrington event.
Yeah, because that's actually what happens when these big high energy events happen. The atmosphere takes the brunt of it, and it can cause heating in the upper atmosphere, which pushes just enough up there that it creates drag at higher altitudes than would normally be there. And essentially, this junk will just deorbit. But like I said, I'm not hoping for a Carrington level event to solve the space junk problem. It'd be better if China would just stop farting around and take this problem seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
And goats.
They're not bad.
Yay!
Do you want to tell us about this, Sora? Because this was something you brought up.
Yeah,
3
I
bad
did.
jokes.
So it seems here that people who decide to move out into the country or rural areas of the more rural suburbs have discovered that people have actual farms there with goats and chickens, and they make noise, and that is not fun.
Farms are noisy? No.
I know. So now they have to warn people in the city that, hey, if you're looking to buy something, because a lot of people also can't afford to live in the city anymore, so they're looking further east, into the suburbs to purchase. So you're looking in farmland, basically, or little hobby farmlands, and this poor woman got this anonymous poison pen letter saying, feed your animals or sell them, or we will be calling the SPCA. We can hear them all the way from our place because of her goats were polluting like goats typically do. And
This
so
is
she
like
actually-
people buying a house for cheap near the airport and then complaining about the
Oh, they
engine
do that
noise.
here
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
They do
yeah,
that here.
exactly.
Don't worry. Exactly. There's, but so this poor woman actually called SPCA, according to the article, to get ahead of it, just in case somebody does complain. They say, "Hey, I've just received this letter. Heads up," you know. But yeah, no, I just, and then there's this other lady who is uh, she sits on the advisory committee for this. It's called Maple Ridge. It's this little municipality, and
Mhm.
she also has a little farm. And she's wanting people to know, and that animals, your neighbors are going to have animals. The animals are going to make noise. They're going to smell, and there might also be machinery that goes on, nonstop the whole workday.
Yeah, fertilizing fields can be really smelly business too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it. Oh, yes, it can.
Yeah, it's not all Gilroy where everything smells like garlic. I mean, the smell of manure,
Which actually does smell like garlic at different times of the year.
yeah, the smell of manure is pungent.
Yes, it
And
is.
they actually, there's this solid stuff that they'll mix into the ground, and then there's the liquified manure. That
I was
they'll
going to say
spray
it's
as
the,
a fertilizer, and
it's
that
the
is
spray
the
that's
that is-
nasty.
That
Yeah.
is the funk. That is not. That is pretty nasty. So I think it was about 10 years ago in Katy, Texas. A Muslim group decided to build a mosque next to a pig farm.
Yes, they
They
did.
got very, very upset at the noise from those unclean animals while they were trying to hold services. So the response of the farmer, who was asked to, they demanded that he stop having the pigs there. And he was multi-generational. I mean, his family had been there for multiple generations. They just showed up. Was to start holding pig races.
Yes, that's exactly. I was going to say
During
this is about the
services.
pig races, isn't it?
Yeah, so people would just show up and they'd get out the loudspeaker and, it's like, hey, it's greased bacon, coming around the corner.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
On
That
the
is
turn,
so
by a snout.
Is it kind of sad? I kind of miss the smell of the farm every now and then.
Yeah.
Like we're talking chicken and pig shit, which is like the most foul smelling.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
at least
Chicken
cow dung
shit
doesn't
is-
smell that bad.
Chicken
Chickens are
shit
worse.
is absolutely one of the foulest thing I have ever smelled. I was
Yeah.
in a barn with me. It was me, the manager of the place, and 3 million laying hens. Let me tell you, first of all, that's a big fucking chicken house, and second, it was in Arkansas, and it was hot. There's no air conditioning, and it smelled so bad. It was absolutely overpowering. I mean, it was overwhelming. I have never smelled anything like that in my life.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
chickens
it's
are
one of the biggest chicken houses on earth.
Well, that's
owned
why
by Tyson Foods.
Well, wasn't it Mao who decided that that birds were eating too much of the grain, so he had them get rid of all the birds, which just
Right.
increased the insects, which then came and ate
Right.
even more grain.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Mao was full of
Unintended
really outside the
consequences.
box thinking. Yeah,
He was captain in unintended consequences. He did. There are lots of stories about stupid suboptimal things that if they just sat down and thought about it. But what happens is these ideas get political movement of their own, and the ideas don't have to be valid to be implemented. Look at the ideas, frankly, of the left, the virtue signaling critical race theory. That's absolute cockamamie bullshit. And anybody who thinks about it critically will be able to discern it by simply reasoning through it and teasing out the inconsistencies in it. You can tell that it's an absolute bullshit theory, but it's being implemented and it's costing us money and opportunity and it's costing us in many other ways. And it's happening right under our noses. So just because an idea is bad doesn't mean that a government won't run with it.
yeah. Well, I do remember
The Holodomor was a thing.
Yeah, talking to my progressive friends, they're like, this is just stuff that happens at universities. What happens at university stays at university. And I'm like, no, these people are going to graduate and take this into the workforce.
Into the world.
They'll become HR directors, and
Exactly right.
yeah. Again, I would much rather have been wrong about that.
Yeah.
Just another time Harry was overreacting to things. Yeah. Anyway,
unfortunately, you're not.
there's everywhere you go, there's Karens trying to do this kind of stuff. The homeowners associations, you really want to stay on their good side. It's certainly a problem. Here, it's just like, why did this person move to the country? They clearly did not know what they were getting themselves into.
Idiot.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Yeah.
Nice.
And they do talk about how it's just like, listen, if you're wanting to purchase any homes around here, go visit during a couple times a year. Ask, who are your neighbors? Oh, it's a farm. What kind of farm is it? Are they do
that's
berries?
important too.
Are they animal rearing? What the
Do
heck
the
does it
chickens
do?
shit?
Exactly. But
Do
I
they
do
poop?
have one more really funny. It's an older article,
Okay.
but just so you know the kind of things they do here, we now have tree range chickens.
Did you
Of
say
course you do.
TREE?
Yes.
Yes,
So
she did.
forest raised chickens that could provide alternative to traditional indigenous foods like moose and salmon. And I will share you the link because the pictures, like the concept's very interesting, but the pictures are adorable. So I'm just putting it in the side check here.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Just-
We like cute things at the end of the night here.
Yeah, I
It's
kind of want to see
just-
these tree chickens now.
It is
Shit, I said the C
adorable.
word again.
What the hell, Sora? What is wrong with your country?
They're tree chickens. They're tree raised chickens. They live in the woods and they make. Look at them. Look how cute. They're like
They look
little
delicious.
Pokemon.
Like it's still contained, so
Go
that
down to
the
next
predators
one. Go down
Wait,
to-
where are their fingers?
below
Those
the
aren't real
beak.
chickens.
Oh, there's some nuggets though.
There we
Yeah,
go.
where
Yeah.
Oh, they're adorable.
little nuggets.
Proponents of the tree range technique of raising chickens say the birds feel more comfortable when they can roost and forage amongst trees. Okay.
I'm
They
not
have an
quite-
acre and a half to run around and be chickens.
Okay.
Whatever that means. What is a chicken's karma? Oh,
Live
God.
your best chicken life.
Right, exactly.
Live,
Be the
laugh,
best protein
cluck.
you can be.
Live, cluck, laugh.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
it is that time. And since we just had a happy note, let's go ahead and end on it. Does anybody need to say anything before we go? Thank you, Dr.
I have,
Happy
I
birthday,
have-
Prospero.
yeah, happy birthday, Prospero.
birthday.
Wanted to make sure we got that in, and also wanted to just remind people, Thomas Jefferson said, the purpose of government is to enable the people of a nation to live in safety and happiness. Government exists for the interest of the governed, not for the governors.
Jefferson was pretty smart most of the time.
Oh, he was the guy who said, when the people fear their government, there's tyranny, and when the government fears the people, there's liberty. Remember that?
All right. Well, we are a little over time, so I'm just going to nip this thing in the bud. Thank you for joining me to my fine panel. And thank you to those of you in chat. And the zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Brr.